Andrew, thanks again for participating today. I think you have a great story and you'd like to share it with a number of people. So uh, let me ask you first, how old were you when you started working with Whitehall in 2016?
I guess 34.
Okay, I figured it was early 30s, but
Yeah.
uh, the reason I'm asking you that is it is a challenge for us as consultants to connect with young dentists. And I know you and I
Yeah.
have talked about this several times, and you have been in contact and have a group of dentists in your age group that you work with in Holiday Salt Lake City area. And I've asked you, what is it that seems to be the resistance factor, or maybe better put, is you told me a story once that you've been very successful and you've shared that with your colleagues and they've all asked you how you did it and what have you told them?
Uh, all I always start with is like you should just find a consultant. Just find a consultant, and they'll help you like figure out what really matters in a practice. And I think at this point I have one that talked to someone, but uh, that's probably like 10 that just refused. They said either it's a waste of money, or I have one of them that's like, I just don't think I would actually do the changes that they recommend. And I'm like, well, that's a pretty good reason not to do it. If you're not going to change, it's not worth doing. But most of them just kind of act like, that won't work for me. My practice is different, that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I remember when I was young and I was a genius also. That
Yeah.
you kind
Right.
of get over that as time passes. So, but that's exactly what we found too, and what I found. Even when I've worked with transitions where a retiring doctor we work with get the practice ready to take on an associate and then do a graduated buyout or even a fairly quick one, usually within 6 months of the conversion or the transition, the young dentist who may be 30 years old will discontinue services because they've got it
Yeah.
all figured out at that point. And it's just incredibly frustrating because we can still see so many things we can help with. And yes, we're not always right on everything, but we sure make a big difference. I went back and looked at your statistics this morning. And when we started working with you in 2016, uh, that year you had produced and collected about 1.1 million, which is really quite good,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
particularly in the office that you were in, which
Yes.
was, I mean, I had a bigger closet than your office when I was growing up, and we were in a
You
small
did.
house. So,
It was tight. It was really tight. Well, and I will say, I I did some of the like dip your toes in the water stuff with you guys a few years before that. So like I
yeah,
can't remember what it's called, but I like got your some of your audio stuff and went through some of that and had like a couple consulting things. So like there was a little stuff that you guys had helped me with, and I tried some other consultants, Scheduling Institute, and a few others, just like here and there. So that, I mean, I needed all that just to get up to the 1.1. I mean, that was
yeah.
really helpful for me.
Well, and at that point you dove in,
Yes.
and
Yeah, we went hard.
yeah, you went big after that. And I remember
Yeah.
the first time I went up to Holiday to look around with you for potential new locations, and we looked at
Yeah.
a lot of different alternatives and weighed the pros and cons. And then you selected a site on right on a busy street, easy access, kind of an open front shopping area with a variety of different businesses, but great traffic, good parking, great visibility. The Over the next 5 years, well, you moved in about 2 years later, as I recall, a year and a half or so it took to get it
Yeah.
ready.
That's
And
late 17.
yep, and you had, I believe, it had 12 treatment rooms and you equipped 8 of them to begin with.
Correct. Mhm.
And then you equipped the rest of them a little later on. And I think a couple of years ago, you said that you were going to actually add on a little bit more to the office. Is that correct? So how many treatment
Yeah.
rooms do you have now?
We have 20 built out, and now we've actually equipped 19 of them.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah, it's
Why don't we start from the very beginning? Because you said that you were doing stuff, so
yeah.
start with what the practice was like at the very beginning, the things you tried,
Yeah.
that you bumped around with. Start from
So
the
I graduated. Salt Lake is a pretty tough market. There's not lots of great associateships around. I started with a guy. I mean, he was just an awful dentist, but he had two locations, and the second location was like a satellite for him. And so he said that at any time I could buy it. It was, I think we produced 275,000 and I was there like, a day and a half, 2 days a week. And then I was in another practice and then somewhere else, but I think it did 275 and I bought it from him because I could not stand working for him. And, and it, I mean, there was not very much profit if you do 275.
No.
So I had, I still had to go get another part-time job somewhere else. And then I started just growing it from there. I did buy the patient base of 2 retiring doctors the next couple of years. So like a year after that, I bought one. And then 2 years after that, I bought another one. And those were each doing very similar. They were right around 300,000 in production practices.
Did you buy them for the charts? Did you just like $50 a chart or something like that? Is that how you did it? Or did you actually buy the practice?
No, I bought it as a whole practice. Yeah, and they were right next to me. One of them was in my building. The other one was in a building right behind mine. We used one of the practice brokers that I'd talked a lot with that helped me buy the first practice, and he kind of helped me, understand what reasonable value would be for these practices. And they were like, for me, they were really good because they had not been super active doing work. Now it was really hard to like get the trust of those patients, transition them over to someone that's doing more comprehensive work. I mean, no one had had a deep cleaning, which, we want to be delicate with perio, but like, I'll bet 30% of those patients had perio that like probably should be at least looked at, and, tons of broken amalgams and things that they just were not doing. So I had to delicately kind of bring them along and I did a couple visits where I would just kind of like prep them on a few things like, hey, we're going to watch all these. And we took interval photos and like ease them into it. Cause no one trusted me. I got literally every day I got comments like, you don't look young, you do not look old enough to be a dentist. And that's why I grew a beard. No joke. It was really hard because both of those guys were like 70. The first guy was younger, but like I said, his practice was very small and he didn't have a great reputation, to be honest. The other guys were like 70, so it was a big transition, and all of their stuff was old, right? Like nothing digital, all paper charts, regular X-rays. Doctors did their own cleanings. There's no hygienist, so getting them used to hygienist was, that took a visit. I had to do a lot of cleanings for about a year, and then after about a year, I was just like, that's not going to happen here anymore, So you can see the hygienist, or you can go somewhere else. But I felt like I needed to meet them and like have some relationship before I just like, cut things off. But it worked pretty well.
How was the retention? You feel like it was pretty strong as far as what you ended up with?
I swear, early on, we were trying to track it, and I swear it was like 70 to 75% of the patients that had been coming regularly stayed with us. So it's a pretty high number, and I mean, the production jumped very, very quickly. I mean, it's way better than marketing money.
Okay,
right? I mean, it's just
where did it end up at? So you were at 300, 250, 300. And then you bought a few practices. Where did you kind of end up at?
Well, in that facility, we kind of topped out at about 1.1, but I had four ops, and I literally had I had a tiny office that was mine, and we converted it to a fifth op, but it was so small, you really couldn't even work in it. Like the hygienist hated it. And then my office was literally like about a foot and a half of a desk in the break room. Like I had no space. It was a catastrophe. But so that was when I was just like, I need something else. So we started looking, and Dr. Peterson helped me kind of find the new space.
So in the interim, before all that, before you got there, you said you were dabbling with different consultants, trying adding things to the practice.
Yeah.
Tell us what you were doing at that point.
Well, I mean, I started stuff right from the beginning. So like the day I bought my first practice, I actually called I was looking up Greg because my father-in-law he's a physician, and he did some of the financial planning stuff with Greg a million years ago, in like the 80s, I think. And so million years ago, I know. He said he liked this guy, and he's like, you should look him up. So I looked him up, and that's when I got I had no money, right? We were producing 250. I think my net in the practice that year was like 60 grand, or I don't know, but not very much, and not enough to pay my loans, right? So I had my other part-time job. So I bought like some videos from you guys, and we started using some of those systems. So we like put leaders in place, and we started a bonus system. We definitely started same day service. And those are the things that like really kind of took off, got that production from 2 to 4 to 5 pretty quick. And after I did that, I did like some littler things with the Scheduling Institute, trying to work on the phones, making sure that our phone scripts were excellent and that we could track how well we were getting our new patients. We did a couple little trainings with the Scheduling Institute, and their content was very good. I didn't like click with the feeling there. Like it's a little bit rah. I don't know. It's very salesy, and I needed something different than that. So I didn't stick with them, but I talked to. I'm an information guy, so I looked at all sorts of stuff. There's a local lady that I talked to for a while. She wasn't very good. I talked to Bill Blatchford, had several phone calls with him, and his model is obviously a little bit different. It's more like get away from insurance and high end, high income per patient. And that kind of made some sense, but I did not see how that was going to work for the practice I was building. It was so small and the competition was so high, but he helped me with some things, more like just taking care of myself and not working myself right to death. And then after that stuff was kind of like, it was okay. I kind of grew the practice to a point where I was like, well, I think I can afford to get a real consultant. And so that's when I called you guys and got hooked up with Dr. Peterson. So I guess maybe it was 16 that we started. I swore I talked to you guys earlier than that too, though. But I'm sure I had conversations here and there. But I was probably the guy who was too cheap to like spring for it, and at the beginning it wasn't just cheap. It was like literally there was no money, right? So I was pretty stressed out for first couple of years in Salt Lake with whatever it was, 300,000 in student loans and whatever else. And my first year I made 95 grand. I know that I made 95, and I was like, this is not going to work.
For people listening, Utah is one of the toughest markets in the United States. It really, they have more dentists per person than anywhere, and it is really a tough market.
The fees are low. That's the thing I noticed, because like there's some other competitive places my friends went to that are probably similar demographically, but their fees, even insurance reimbursements, are like 15-20% higher. And that was one of the things. Like if you just take all the plans here, they're way worse than Medicare or Medicaid in a lot of places.
Yeah.
So that was the thing that was just killer at the beginning. So.
Okay, and so then you started working with Dr. Peterson here, and you still had the 4 ops, or did you add the 5th?
We added the 5th, but you could barely count it because we couldn't really work out of it. We increased production a tiny bit, but it was not functional. It was like a 6x8 room. It was not a good idea.
You had to turn sideways to get in the doorway.
you literally, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the hygienists were like pissed at me when I asked them to work in there. were so mad.
And how many you just had one hygienist at this point?
I think at that point we had added a second. In fact, for sure we had. Yeah, because I had just added my current office manager. She started back in that office, and she was my second.
Okay, and give me an idea. Like, was hygiene completely filled? Was new patients booming? Was the practice really busting at the seams?
When we started looking at moving, yeah, I mean because I had started. I mean, I was always pretty aggressive with marketing. Scheduling Institute had helped me kind of like figure out new patient stuff. So I mean, I've got numbers. I can probably tell you exactly. Am I losing you? Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. It'd be interesting to know, yeah, kind of the new patient flow before you really decided to even like 2015, what it would have been like.
Oh, I thought I was more prepared than this. I guess I only have my stuff up from Dr. Peterson, 2016.
Well,
I'll have to look it up in a second.
2016 would be fine because
2016 we averaged 34. We averaged 34 new patients in 2016. 2017, somewhere in there is when we moved to our new space, and we jumped from 34 to 82 new patients. And our budget went up quite a bit too. I think it was right around then I started working with SMC marketing and Gary Bird. And that was another one that was like, it took me a real jump to start working with him, because he was awesome, because he would guarantee me, he's like, I guarantee you this number of patients for X number of dollars, but I think his minimum was like $6,000 a month or something. And it just seemed impossible to me, right? I mean, it seems like a lot of money, but he was the first marketing guy that was like, I will do whatever it takes to get you this number of leads, not new patients, right? Leads.
Right.
But it wasn't like clicks on your website or what, all these things, these metrics that they use that you're like, I don't really care if they're not showing up or if they're not at least calling. Right.
Right.
So, at that point we moved, I jumped in with Gary, probably increased my budget, because I think I had already started with Gary in that old space, but, all of a sudden you've got the capacity, right? So I had all these new ops, and so now you can see a ton of new patients. But so we were doing 35 new patients a month, in the smaller facility.
And then quickly, when you moved, you upped the budget. All of a sudden, you had 80 new patients a month. Was it overnight, or?
It was fast. It was very quickly. I mean, the thing is you go from, my facility was small in a small building. You couldn't see it. There was no visibility. People kind of knew about it, but not really. And it looked old, and I had updated the inside once. So I did like a small remodel. I mean, probably $8,000, $10,000 worth of paint and carpets and those sorts of things, just to like update it, make it look sort of modern. But we went from that, and the building I designed was actually fairly, I'll say cheap, but like I did it pretty frugally, but it looked really nice. I tried to figure out what things really mattered.
How many square feet was it? I mean, what kind of?
4,800.
4,800. And did you buy it, or you just lease it?
No, just lease it. Yeah, there's not a ton of stuff that you can buy. I got a pretty good deal on it. It's actually in an older strip mall, and the strip mall doesn't look super nice, and it had been vacant for a long time. And but it's on a busy street. It's right across from, it's kind of funny because it was across from this old mall that had been there for a million years, and it had been knocked down 5 or 6 years prior, and they've been talking about rebuilding it, and they still haven't. They're just barely, they put some condos, and those are just barely going up. So it's been like, I think it's been like 15 years or I don't know, something crazy since it's been knocked down. So that was it for me, though. I was like, this is an area that historically has been busy. But the building had been vacant for a while. So I negotiated a really good lease rate. It had 4,800 square feet. So like our ops are tight. We don't have any like cabinets in them. I used design ergonomics for some of my design stuff. I didn't buy all their stuff. Their equipment's pretty expensive, but I used a lot of their principles and their design ideas. For sterilization, it was huge to make that efficient. And I put an enormous amount of time into design on my own, right? Like I paid an architect, but I didn't pay someone, that was really, really expensive. I bought like a floor plan from Design Ergonomics, and then I kind of tailored it to what I wanted. But like I was just trying to figure out how many ops I could fit in there, because I've been working with you guys. It's like what matters is the ops, right? Production per op is what you're going to get. If I have a 4,800 square foot place and it's beautiful and I spend $3 million on it, and you got 6 ops, it's not going to work, right?
How many ops did you open up with that were functional, ready to go?
It was actually 7. We had 7 to start, and 12 bays, 12 rooms.
Right.
So we had 7 chairs, and so I went from 4.5, we'll say 4.5 in my old space to 7. And right before I moved, I had hired an associate, and it did not work. He was a guy that had already retired, and I thought that was going to be a great fit because he had so much experience, but it was not a great fit. But he was there for like he was there for like 3 or 4 months, and I had to replace him. But just having him there, our production and our capacity just increased. So even just having someone else there that just was not a great fit for us, but we immediately, like, visibility was there. We'd have walk-ins that we never had before. I don't even know how to explain it, but like it was maybe not overnight, but within 1, 2, 3 months, I mean, everything went up quite a bit. And now your expenses were way higher, right? So you're still sweating a little bit, but it started producing very quickly.
And what things, with him were, I want to say deal killers, things that didn't work, or things that not to, when you're interviewing associates now, is there things that you picked up that you go, oh, well,
I mean, one of the things that was a challenge is he was like 70, 65. And all of I was young, all of my staff was young, and he had like these people that he'd been working with forever. And so I think some of it was like him working with a 21-year-old assistant just wasn't flowing well. He had referred out like everything complicated, right? And again, my market's tough, and I try and do a little of everything, right? And I've gotten to where I can do pretty much everything, but he would take on some molar root canals, and they would be not good, right? So I had to redo a ton of stuff, and I thought because he was that old, I just assumed he was really good, and I didn't know how to test him or whatever. Now we make every associate prep a model. I try to find a patient that will let us do free work on them, and I'll ask associates to do like prep a crown, prep a filling. So I've got a few patients that like have, they really would like the help. They have mouths that are a disaster, and they've let us do quite a bit of stuff on them for free, and they love it. That's great for them, and that's great for us, because we've had a few dentists that were like, I'll redo that for free, and we're not going to hire him.
Well, one day I will comment here. Hold on. One day this will happen to you. You'll get old and you'll be like, I'm just sick of these procedures. And 4 or 5 years will go by, and you'll lose your skills.
I know.
Because that happens. So a lot of our doctors decide, hey, I'm just not going to do that anymore. And you do lose your skills. So getting an older doctor, I think, it could happen for sure, where you find somebody really hasn't kept up on certain things.
Yeah. And he hadn't, and not that, I know other doctors in my area that are still practicing at 70, and they're awesome, and they have like all the new equipment, and like they do great work. In fact, the endodontist I referred to, I think, is 70. He's awesome, right? But I do think there was, and he had retired. He didn't need the income, right? Like he was just kind of wanting something to do, and I think it was just much more. I think we were much more aggressive than he wanted to be. Like I was trying to push and do same day service, work really hard, and it was just not it really just was not a like personality fit, right? I'm a little bit high strung, a little bit like if I'm at work, I want to work. I do not want to be sitting around. I'm not there to like chat and hang out. Um, so it is a little hard to find the right people that are going to fit in that culture, because I've had several people that they just leave quick because they're like, this is too much. And I get it. I mean, it's definitely not for everyone. We figure that out with staff. I pretty much tell them, if I interview, I don't interview very much anymore, but if I interview anyone, I just tell them right up, I'm like, we're not like the typical office. It is fast paced. You're going to work hard. And that's how I like it. Like, a slow day just kills me. I'm just, I turn into a basket case, and my staff hates it because I'm pacing the office and stuff. And so, finding the right fit associate wise was really important for us.
So you learned to have them prep on models, and then bring in a free patient and watch their watch
Yep.
what they.
Yep.
That's worked well for you, I take it, from that day forward.
It's been really good. It's helped a lot. It's helped a lot. I mean, we've not done that forever, but for my last couple, we have, and it's been really helpful. You get a pretty good feel. I hired a girl. She was only with us for about a year, but it was interesting. She was the best we had at the time, but when she prepped her stuff, we were all like, hopefully we can get her better. Like, she wasn't terrible. She was just slow and not awesome, right? She was just okay. And the whole time, like, I would work with her, and my other associate would work with her, and we'd talk with her about, she wanted to make more money. And so we're trying to tell her how to work it. It just never happened. And then she had some personal stuff happen, so she had to leave for family reasons. But, watching it happen is like, I should have known right off the bat that wasn't going to work, because it was not happening in that interview prep, right? So the other ones, so I have 3 associates right now. All 3 of them in the interview, I knew were going to be great. So, but it's hard to find, right? It takes, I've had a bunch of associates. I'd have to add it up. I don't know how many.
Since 2016, how many have you hired and had to let go? You had to guess.
So, first one for sure. I had another one I had to let go. I had one that I had for like 5 or 6 years. Probably, because I let him go maybe 2 years ago. Me and Dr. Peterson worked with him a ton, and he was just erratic. He would like be good for a while, and then we'd have patient complaints. So I had him for 5 years, and I had to let him go. That girl I was just telling you about, she left. I had another girl that left, and then I've got 3 others. So I've had 8, and I've got 3. The one's been with me. He graduated in like 17, and he came right out of school. He went to Texas for about 6 months, thinking it would be better there, and he came back. So he's been there since, and he's been really good. And then I've got my other associate's been there 2 years. Yeah, 2 years this month. And then the other one just 6 or 7 months. But she's awesome. She's been in a corporate place for like 9 years. She kind of ran her own thing, but just does not like the business side. And she is a fantastic dentist. She is so good. And so 6 months ago, we got her going early on. She was doing right around 50. It was like every month for the first 5-6 months. It was like right around 50,000. And seriously, her 6th month was January, and she did 91. So it just takes a little time. But I knew, like, in her interview, I was like, this girl is, she's almost as good as I am. And so it's like, this is what I need. So I've tried to do everything I can to keep her happy.
Okay, so let's go back in time. And so you opened with 7, right?
Yeah.
You had a doctor. You got rid of them. You brought another one in. And what was the practice doing at that point? You said 80 new patients, and what were you numbers hitting at that phase?
So 2017. Yeah, we moved in August, I think, that year, and we did my first month in, we did 130,000, and that was tied for my very biggest month ever. And then we had one slow one, and then after that it was like 209, 150, 177. So that year we ended at 1.6 million,
and at just above a $2 million pace. So 160, 170, something like for sure was the pace.
Yeah, the next year we did basically 2. Yeah, right. 1.98. Yeah.
And you averaged 80 new patients during that period, that second year?
Actually, we bumped up to 107. So probably, like, our efficiency was probably not there. And and honestly, still my efficiency is not great, but so we had the one associate in 2017. We switched to that guy that I had for about 5 years. I added a second associate halfway through 18. So it was in June, and that was when, so that doctor had graduated. And so getting up to 2 million, we had added a second associate, but he was only, like, he averaged 27,000 a month. The other guy was averaging 38,000 a month. So I was not making much money off of those guys. Like, I was not crazy profitable for sure, but it was better. And I knew, like, I could see where things were going, right? I was still trying to build things, but yeah, so we averaged 107 new patients that year.
What's wrong with what was causing them not to really blossom?
I mean, some of his personality. The one guy was right out of school.
Okay.
The other one was just, Dr. Peterson, are you on?
Yeah, I am. I would say the other one, I know exactly who you're talking about.
And describe him.
He just had a lot of reasons not to come to work. You know, he'd be sick, or his dog had there's always something. He was gone all the time. He wasn't good with patients, didn't make good connection with them or staff. And he was kind of better than nothing, but not a lot better than nothing.
So bad fits, really just bad fits as far as associates.
Yeah, I mean, he was. The other one was right out of school, and it's just hard to get someone out of school to grow, right? Like, he did better his second year, and his third year. But 2021, all of a sudden he was doing over 70,000 a month, and since then he's gone up. So it took a couple years to really crank that up. And the other guy, even though he was really weird, our systems, I mean, got better and better. And we got him up to 2021 was his last full year, and he averaged 67. He did 811,000 that year, and he's a weird dude. He just is. He's kind of odd. He's very nice, but he's kind of a goofy guy, and I'd have to deal with negative complaints of patients all the time, just because they'd be like, he said something like super weird and kind of awkward and offensive. I took it weird, or he was not, like, he didn't have great hands, so patients would complain about pain all the time. I'd fix it. It really was just us developing these systems in the office. Like, that's the thing that, like, I mean, we're still working so hard on it, right? But at that time, I was coming from little to nothing. And if you go to 12 ops and you've got, I don't know how many assistants we had to jump to at that point, but all of a sudden you've got a business worth of people that you're trying to deal with. And that is that's a huge undertaking to figure out how to make that work well. Our production went up, but the efficiency was, so at first. You really have to work on those systems to make it work for associates that are not super strong.
So you said you got your second assistant. They weren't or assistant, second
associate.
Associate was okay. So then when did you really start to crank? So did you have to let one of them go and bring somebody else in, or both?
Yeah, I mean, it was just the one that was out of school, he's actually still with me. He left for a minute, and I hired someone else, and he was just so slow. I had him for, looks like, 8 months, and he averaged 26,000. It just was not happening, right? So we just had to let that one go. The other guy I just kept with, just because he was as good as I had, and he was there for several years. And the other one was new, and over the years he just got, he did keep getting better and better. And then I had a couple, like, in 2021 I added a third associate, and she was only part-time, and it just wasn't happening. So
like 2020, where were we at that point?
Let's see, total 2020, I did 2.8.
Okay. So
2021, I mean, and then obviously that's COVID, right? So there were a few months that were a little lower. My average was like 234. So it was like or later in the year, I was doing closer to 250, 260. 21, I did 3.7. 22, I did 3.9. 23, we did 4.4.
And what kind of new patients are you at now?
New patients?
Yeah, like where you were at one at the beginning,
137. Last year we did one. In fact, the last 2 years we've been 137. The year before we got up to 150. I don't know how that worked, but yeah, we've been right around 130. Yeah, 130 to 150 a month is pretty typical for us.
So really not that much more than the 107 after that year that you moved in. After you hit 80 and then you went to 107. So really the numbers kind of stayed the same. It's just kind of building everything out, building the team and building the doctors up and obviously retaining patient flow.
Well, and some of it was me, right? Because like my production, I was still trying to get myself really going. In 2016, when I started with you guys, I was only doing 69,000 a month.
Okay.
Right. So like I had to get my skills. I think at that point it was mostly my sales skills. Like I was good at selling individual stuff, not big cases. And I had done a ton of implant training. So I got my associate fellowship with the American Academy of Implant Dentistry. So I've done a ton of implant training and I was doing a bunch of singles, but I hadn't done many big cases, hadn't done many like full mouth crown and bridge rehabs. I've done a few. I do like, a couple a year maybe. But my big thing, somewhere in there where my production jumped, I did the stuff you guys talked about. I got IV certified. I started, I was doing a bunch of CE trying to like learn how to do like all on four cases. And as I was learning the all on four cases, I would sell a few more of those, but I found that because I was confident talking about those, my singles jumped a ton. So like I all of a sudden was doing 120 implants a year and still mostly singles, right? I would do a few of these big cases, but but getting better at the bigger stuff and getting better at selling, all of a sudden people were just saying yes. And some of it I don't always look back and be like, yeah, this is what I did differently. It's just like I think I just naturally got better. And now I don't even try to sell things because I feel like I'm so busy trying to run the stupid practice that I'm like, sure, if you want to do it, I'm great. I will do anything you want to do. I love doing dentistry. I like being busy. You don't want to do it, that's totally fine. And more people say yes than they ever have. Right. So
yeah, that's the whole validity thing Greg always talks about. You become so where you don't need it and it works. Yeah, definitely.
It's weird. It's a weird feeling. But yeah. So like
what are you at now? What are you producing now? So you were at 60s in the 68 when you moved. Where are you at now?
So the last 2020 and on, I've done about 90.
Okay.
90, 95, 85. But I also right around then. So 2021, I was still working 5 days a week. Or no, 4 days a week, excuse me, 4 days a week. I've gone, in 2022, I went down to 3 clinical days. So, so I, like last year, I did 92,000 a month. That's no hygiene, right? And I did three clinical days, and I probably take off, I don't know, most of my travel is like my days off, but I probably took off another 4 or 5 weeks. So.
Yeah, so things are cranking at this point.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. So tell me about when you moved. Let's talk about the team a little bit. What have you learned? COVID, all these new team members. I'm sure some turnover. Tell us about your experience with your team, your leadership, and how all that's went.
Gosh, yeah. I mean, you have to have a really strong office manager, clinic administrator, whatever, that has real leadership managerial skills. I had someone that was very good. Dr. Peterson worked with me with her for quite a while. She had some substance abuse issues, I came to find out later. And she was a little erratic, and she was just kind of mean to staff, but she was way better than anyone I had ever had. So I held on to her for a long time. And that was really hard. We had so much turnover with staff at that point. So finally, it just came to a breaking point where I had to let her go. But like, you know, there's a lot of trial and error, right? Trying to find these right fits. And I always hold on longer than I should. I'm always fearful of, getting someone that's better. That I've always leveled up. I don't know why I still have that fear all the time, but it's, I also am one of my real values is like, I want to be fair. And so I do not like firing people early. If I feel like they have a chance to improve or they're fit the culture, I want to give people every chance, which from a business standpoint, it's not great, honestly. But like she was really strong, but so heavy handed, we'd have a lot of turnover. I had to make some system changes, get rid of her. I had a hygienist that was like my lead hygienist. She was just, I could tell she was smart. I didn't know her super well, but I just needed someone short term. And I just put her in. I was like, would you do this for a minute? And she said yes. And she's been amazing. Like she's been so good. And she's still there now. So that was just, she kind of like fell in place. And, I think a lot of my best hires, it's just like I'm trying so many things and losing people that all of a sudden someone sticks and like you can actually see what's happening. But with staff, especially assistants, it's like I don't know how good people are going to be for a long time. So we do have a lot. Now we don't have as much turnover. Like the culture of the office is much better. My office manager is much better. We've added, we found that we were losing a lot of people because of like having no benefits. So we got healthcare and we got a 401k, and then, we were doing all these bonuses with you guys before. And we're finding that none of our front desker assistants they didn't understand it. Like they were still like, yeah, I make $18.50 an hour. Like, no, you make 25, Like it's so hard to explain that to people because I had so many people leave for like $20 an hour or 21. And I'm like, you've been averaging 25. Like, I don't know why you're leaving. And they would leave. So we've decreased bonuses a lot because people just don't get it. And it drives me crazy. I don't know. I don't know. All my leaders are highly bonus incentivized and they get it. And they work really hard. They're driven for it. We found assistants in front desk. We have a few, like we have a same day service bonus. We have some sort of bonus for like closing cases for like treatment coordinators, and a new patient bonus. So if you get people to show up that you talk to on the phone, but outside of that, we don't have anything. We don't have fishbowl. We don't have like big office goals for everyone except for the leaders. So that's helped keep people.
Okay, so you got how many leaders? So you got your office manager, you got a front desk leader and a back office leader. Is that?
Yes, and a hygiene.
Oh, so you got 4 leaders.
Yeah, 4.
And they're
four leaders.
highly motivated and bonused
Yeah.
well. I take it if they hit their numbers.
Yep.
And
They're bonused pretty well. Yeah.
Numbers, they're the ones that make it happen.
Yeah, through
the team.
They work really hard.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you got to have a good team, and you got to get rid of people that are causing problems. But those leaders are really good. They work really hard. I try to find things that like make them feel different and special. So like we've started implementing. So there's a small business system called Traction that basically just like helps you understand like when to do meetings and how to effectively structure meetings. So we do a quarterly meeting. All of our leaders, I go off site. A couple of the times we've like stayed at a hotel. They hit a big goal last year, so we took them up to a Waldorf and bought everyone and their spouse a room for the night and did our meeting up there. And so that was pretty significant for a lot of them. I mean, the bonus, obviously, you got to have the bonus, right? And you got to like, I spent a lot of time with their emotional well-being because they take on so much. Like we see so many patients with 3 associates. We're busy. I've got 5 full columns of hygiene, maybe 6.
Mm-hmm.
And, so, I mean, we're seeing 100 patients a day. So you multiply all the negative feedback you get on a small practice, all of a sudden that's just a lot of stuff. So like, I feel like my leaders, that's one of the things I end up spending a lot of my like mental energy on, is just making sure that they are doing okay. Right. I take a lot of feedback from my office manager, because she gets kind of overwhelmed, because it's a big job, right? I'm asking her to do a ton of stuff. And at this point, I don't even know how to do
Right.
you know, anything, uh, outside of the dentistry. So I'm just trying to make sure that they're feeling okay with how the practice is going. I spend a ton of effort and time on that, but they do a lot of work. I try and make them feel like it's their practice, right? Like I feel like I'm pretty good at definitely being more of a servant leader. I am. If they've got ideas that they want to try, I will pretty much let people run with their ideas, even if I disagree at first. So I'm like, let's try it out, right? Like most things are not going to kill your practice, and I want to empower them to make decisions, to do their job. I get out of the way. I let them do their stuff. We have a leadership meeting every week, and I give a lot of feedback. And if something's not working, I will quit it. I'll quit it, an idea, very quickly. In fact, we do that all the time, and I think it drives people crazy, because one of our values is change leads to growth, and we do a lot of change. So they've had to like tone me down a little bit, so we're not bouncing around as much.
So you're working 3 days. Are the other 2 days, are you in the practice working still?
One day all day. So I see patients Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Tuesday, Wednesday I've extended hours. I'm there till like 7.
Okay.
So I'm working. I don't start till like 9 or 10, but I'm I stay till 7 or 8. And then Thursday I'm there basically all day. We have our leadership meeting in the morning, and then just whatever managerial stuff. I'm almost always there 8 to 5 on Thursday, just doing whatever.
Yeah.
And then Fridays I'm mostly off. I end up doing stuff those days, but I'm not in the practice. I'm doing accountant, legal, planning. In the past, I sometimes do stuff with Dr. Peterson on Fridays. So,
Is Chrissy still your CA?
Chrissy?
Yeah, Chrissy.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. Chrissy's a hygienist. I work with 2 other hygienists. Mark Looney there that you see. His CA is also a hygienist, and I will tell you, those 3 are as sharp as any CAs I've ever seen. They understand dentistry so well. They understand scheduling, and a lot of them really understand business. So don't ever exclude a hygienist who is looking at something different, because my experience personally has been with at least half a dozen, and I would say all of them, with the exception of 1, were really outstanding.
Yeah, the problem is they already make so much money, right? And
Yes.
so it's a little fearful. Like when I put Chrissy in, my other office manager was making less, and Chrissy was, and I was like, well, I'm obviously not going to expect Chrissy to take a pay cut. And so I told her, look, I'll pay you. And she felt bad about it. She's like, well, I'm not taking that job. You can't pay me the same as you're paying me now to do that job. And, I was just like, look, I like you. I like working with you, and I don't like working with hardly anyone. So like, we're going to pay, we're just going to try it and see how it goes. And, so, I mean, she makes pretty good money. I think I looked it up last year, and I think I paid her, 110,000 last year. But, and our hygiene, some of you guys might have really like crazy high hygiene. Our hygiene is somewhere in the 42 to 45 an hour. I know some areas it's like 60 and 65. And so they would make more than my office manager even, but that's about our market, is somewhere in that ballpark, which for us feels so, really high. It's gone up a ton. But that's the holdback of putting a hygienist in that position. And honestly, if you just like look at the people you have, in my case, our hygienists are just smarter than everyone else in the office. They have, they're college educated. They really understand dentistry. They got high skill level, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But they're really high compensated. So like it's, when you first do that, it kind of sucks. You're like, that's a lot of money to pay for a role that theoretically I could get for 35 an hour or whatever, 40 an hour. But yeah, Chrissy's been worth every penny. She's really, really great. So.
All right, let's open it up for questions. So Lori, if you wouldn't mind unmuting everybody, and let's get everybody to ask a question. So if you wouldn't mind, if you've got a question, raise your hand. I got a question. So are you still using the same marketing company? You're still with SMC, or do you bounce that around a little bit?
We currently are still with SMC. We found they have grown a ton, and we felt like the relationship with them has been a little bit tougher because we get less experienced people at times, and so we've looked around, but it's been pretty consistent. So we've just stuck with them for now. We've looked around a little bit, but right now we are still with them.
Yeah, that's what I noticed with them. Yeah, they've grown a lot. Relationship, like you said, they got different people in there.
Yeah, it's kind of annoying, and so I do think our results have dipped a little bit. But again, it's like you'd better have someone that is really going to be great, because I cannot afford to have that number drop a ton, right? That's the one thing that would really hurt. So,
we got a question. Is that Dr. Davidson?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Thank you, doctor. Tell me 3 things that have been magic for you, that not in the past, but when you've made the big leaps. 3 things.
Really great leadership. Space. Like, you have to have capacity, and you have to invest in capacity ahead of the production. And so that sucks, right? It's painful and it's risky and it hurts, but being willing to take those risks, investing ahead of the production that's going to come, that's the magic for me, right? That is like the number one thing. But you have to have leadership, because as soon as you start doing that, your bandwidth is going to go way down, and you will not be able to manage what's happening around you. So you have to have leadership in place first, and then it's all about your willingness to invest in those things ahead of time. And then I'd say for me, it's like when I've gotten really good at skills. So like when I was able to do any implant case I can do now. And when I could do basically any single implant, including sinus lifts and any type of grafting, whatever, when I could do that predictably, my production jumped a ton, and my profitability jumped a ton. Same thing with sedation. When all of a sudden I was like really fluent with sedation, the appointments were efficient. That helped me jump a ton. So I'd say those things. Yeah, leadership, space, and then just like individual skills that if you love it and you get really good at it, like the high ticket items, like implants right now are the very most efficient for us. But I know some guys love ortho or love, if you're not doing endo, like you've got, that's one that is, you can do an infinite amount of endo, and if you're good at it, it can still be profitable. But you got to get it efficient, right? You got to get it dialed in.
What about same day, Andy?
Oh, yeah, same day. I guess we've done that almost from the beginning because of Whitehall. So that's one that is huge for basically every practice. Every practice I talk to. So if you're not doing same day service, you have to do that. That you don't have to add space, you don't have to add people, or maybe one assistant or something, right? But it's mostly a mindset thing and a systems thing. And if you do that, like when we added same day, that's how I actually went from that 240 or whatever at the very beginning. We almost doubled one year right at the beginning because we added same day service. We went from like 275 to 500, I think, in a year. And the only change I made was adding same day.
And you said it right. It's a cultural thing. Getting your team.
Yes. Your team. Yeah.
On board.
People that have never done it, no one wants to do it. They're like, why would we do that? patients are going to be waiting and it's stressful and it's too hard on your assistants and blah, 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 all that stuff. And that's it, you know, it's all about your mindset. None of it's true. Like if you've got a good assistant, like you're going to crank it out. And you, that's the other mindset thing with dentists. Many guys can go a lot faster and do the same quality than they do. That's what I'd say. Like I know there have been a bunch of doctors I've talked to at Whitehall that were resistant to it. So let me tell you a story. My first Whitehall meeting I go to, and I sat with this doctor, and he'd been with Whitehall for like 3 years, and he looked like a mad scientist. He was from New Jersey, had this heavy accent, and he had like gray hair that was just like going everywhere, right? I mean, just like he seriously came right out of a cartoon or something. And super strong personality. And he's the type that would just tell you, he's like, yeah, I'm kind of abrasive. People don't really like me that much, but like, I'm just telling you, you can go so much faster than you can ever imagine. He's like, I always thought I had to go slow, and my crown preps were an hour and a half. And I remember sitting there like, this guy is so weird. But you know, my crowns at that point were like, I think we were booking an hour and a half or whatever, hour and 15. And he was basically like, I promise you, you can do it in an hour. And I've done that. And that was the thing that changed him with Whitehall. He was able to get his time down, and he did same day service, and it doubled his practice. Right. And I remember looking at the guy and just being like, this is the weirdest person I've ever met. And he was doing so well. Like he felt like he'd grown so much. I was like, well, I've got to be able to do it. I'm going to cut my time at least in half. And it was just that mindset about being like, okay, you know, I know it's supposed to look like, let's see if I can make it look exactly the same in, you know, 25% less time, or, you know, 50% less time. And I was amazed that when I pushed myself, I could do it very quickly. Like the next day, right? If I just put my mind to it, like I'm going to be good and fast. I would not sacrifice quality. I'm pretty anal about like, I want stuff right. And when it's not right, or my associates are not right, like it's, you know, we don't like that. But I mean, I cut my time down dramatically. And that was actually one of the most like impactful things that happened at Whitehall, was meeting this like mad scientist guy.
I think I know exactly who you're talking about.
He was a character. He was so nice to me. He was so good. But I remember just being like, this guy is just seems just bizarre. But
yeah. Okay, any other questions? Anybody else got a question they'd like to ask? I got a question, Lee. How often do you watch your associates' quality? I mean, what's your quality control look like? Since you are somebody that care about that, so how do you do that?
So I mean, as we started doing more and more systems, my team actually cares about the associates, and when the associates start, my team is so critical, and so I will get just infinite negative feedback about the associates, right? So I'll get sticky notes about patients every day. They'll be telling me, you know, assistant hygienists are the best and worst, right? They are so picky. They'll be complaining about every little thing. So I just tell, when we have someone start, I tell everyone, look, if there's stuff you don't like, I need to know. And I will get lots and lots. So I will look at cases every day. If it's anything big, if it's an implant, I will always check to make sure things went well and look right. But mostly it's just like following up with those negative things. And as soon as the associates realize that I'm looking and expecting a certain level, I find that anything that doesn't go the way they want it to, they come to me now. They're like, hey, so I sat this crown, has a slight open margin. I thought it was fine. And what do I do? So we'll look at it and be like, well, is that okay? Is it gonna be okay? Or do we need to cut it off? Like, do we need to do it again? Right. So like we'll sit down together and do that. But yeah, I've got a lot of tattletales in the office. So I don't like actively go out searching stuff. But we do meet at least once a month to talk about like quality control. And I will bring up the x-rays on all, like a bunch of the negative cases people tell me about. And a lot of it will be diagnosis, right? It's like, okay, someone said a DO here, it turned into endo. Why? Like, why did we recommend a DO here when all of us sitting here now are like, well, that should have been endo from the beginning, right? Or why are you doing a filling there when you can barely see it on the x-ray, or whatever it is. And all of us sit together and we're, I try and be like all of us do the same thing. They'll point out my crap too. So like, I'll have hygienists, be like, Dr. Erickson screwed this up, and they think it's really funny when I screw up. So like, we'll bring up my cases. Everyone gets to look at me being an idiot sometimes. So.
All right. Dr. Davis, you got another quick question?
Yes, I've got actually 3 questions. The first one, do you do a membership? The second one, what do you do for marketing? And what are your total hours in a week that patients are available to see a doctor in your office?
Yes, we do a membership. Ours is about $250 a year. Second one, the last one was ours. What was the second one? Sorry.
Marketing. What else do you do?
Marketing.
You pay-per-click?
Only pay-per-click, basically. It's almost all Google ads. I've tried everything. That's the one thing that is very predictable. I understand that there's some companies that are pretty effective and predictable with like social media. I just haven't found that, but like for us, I spend, so for that many new patients, I don't think are 16,000 a month.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So pretty big budget to get there. But yeah, almost all pay-per-click. Go ahead.
Yeah. And hours? What I think that's.
Hours. Gosh. So we might just have to add it up. Monday is 9 to 5. Tuesday is 8 to 7. Wednesday's 8 to 7. There's only a couple doctors and hygienists there from 8 to 10 though. I'm a night owl, so I like start late. So 8 to 7, 8 to 7. Thursdays, 8 to 6. Fridays, 8 to 4. So I don't know how many hours that is, but
50.
You can add it up. 50? Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. All of our doctors work 4 days. We have all the doctors at 4 days. One of the doctors is new-ish. Like he was in the military and they came out. He wants to work hard, so he will do like the early and late hours, right? So he'll go 8 to 7. I go 10 to 7, and I think the other doctors do 10 to 7 on those longer days. So some of those hours are a little bit less capacity, maybe, but that's worked well for us. Late hours for us have been great. I know some people have not had good success with them, but like 4 to 7 on Tuesday and Wednesday. I mean, we have 19 ops full the whole time. I mean, it's out of control.
All right. Yep. Go ahead.
Okay, on the marketing on this pay-per-click, I've never done that before. How many new patients do you see on this pay-per-click? I assume you're tracking that.
Yeah, so we end up paying about $175 per lead. I think is what it is. So like, because we did last year we did almost 150 new patients a month, but a chunk of those are referrals. The company that we use they're called SMC Marketing. They're out of California, but I think most companies do this now. Most of the bigger marketing groups, and they will have some sort of software, so they'll have a special phone number that you can track from their advertisements, right? So that you know exactly how many leads they are providing. And I've heard anywhere from $100 to $200 per lead is pretty reasonable or about normal. We've gotten it down as low as 100. It's funny when I look back, like a few years ago, we averaged over 150 new patients a month, and I think we spent less money then. So we've spent more money and gotten fewer new patients. So it's been a little less efficient recently, but anywhere between $100 and $200 is what you kind of have to expect to get a new patient in the door. It is, that's just kind of cost doing business, but they do all the pay-per-click. I have no idea how they do it with Google. I know they have keywords that they're looking for. I did do it myself for like a couple months. It's not worth your time. It's a disaster to learn. And so I don't know the science of it or exactly how it works. I just have found a good company that is predictable. So
I would say figure out $200 per new patient, actually
Yeah.
through the door.
through the door. Yeah.
Through the
Yeah,
door,
I'll bet.
$200 per new
Yeah.
patient is
Yeah.
kind of what we'll see. We have people that beat it. There's
Yeah.
a couple years ago it was easier. Now it's more
Yeah.
difficult. It can go up to 250 in really hard times, but it's going to range somewhere around $200 new patient through the door.
Yeah, and I guess our phone conversion is like 95%.
Pretty good.
It's really high. Like we are, again, we're pretty uptight, and so we do a lot of coaching on phones. If you're not good on the phones, you're going to have a meeting with someone.
Well, it
All
can
the
go
time.
200 like that. So we said $200 per
Yeah.
new patient. If you're not good on the phones, you figure $400 per new patient. That's how big it's like.
Yeah.
Forget it. Marketing won't work.
Yeah.
You're done.
It's a disaster. Yeah. So like, and that's why like you've got to have a leadership in place, because you probably don't even know what a good phone call sounds like. You know what I mean? Like doctors, how would you know, right? And I didn't know until I started like talking to consultants about it. And honestly, I am not like, there was a time where I did a ton of coaching on that, and I was like listening to calls and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. My wife started doing our phone training like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. And she was, I mean, she was great at it. And we seriously had people doing phone training, I'll bet, at least every other week, if not every week. And we'd sit down with them for 30 minutes and make them listen to the calls that were not good. And so we spent a ton of effort on that. So you got to have a leadership that can really follow through that. Because if you're not answering the phones well, you might as well not spend anything on marketing. It will not work. But I have a buddy that's exactly like, he's one of the guys that me and Peterson talked about. I've told him a million times he's got to get consultants. He wants to like spend a bunch of money on like special, like I'm marketing this type of implant package, blah blah blah. And I've checked his office and I call, no one ever answers the phone. And so I'm like, I know you complain about how bad it is, and I'm like, dude, you gotta like. He says his office manager is so good. I'm like, yeah, but she doesn't answer the phone, so she can't be that good, you know.
It sounds simple, but it's not. Yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult, but it is simple, right? Like the steps are simple, the processes are simple. It's just hard, and the consistency is, and getting everyone else to be consistent, having a whole team that's good, and that is like, you know, that's real work.
Okay. You got another question yet?
This is my last question. When you talk about production, I think you said, if I recall, you said 4.4 was your last year's production. Was that a gross production or a net out production?
Oh, that is actually collections. Yeah, that's collections.
That's your collections.
4.4. Yeah, that's collections. I probably said production. I only really look at collections. We do adjusted production. I guess our adjusted production was exactly the same. 4.4. Yeah. Yeah, our collection percentage is like is really high. So it's usually very close.
Well, I promised that was my last question, but do you pay your associates on collection or production or net production?
We do net production just because, like, especially when they first start, there's so much backlog of stuff, and we found that to get the best associates, you should have a guarantee. I've done a ton, yeah, and now my newest associate is still technically on a guarantee, but she's been over it basically every month. But if you're going to get people that you want in your practice, you're going to have some level of guarantee. And then we do 30% of adjusted production. That way, the first month there is production for them to get paid off of, and like you have to wait for that money to come in, obviously sometimes. But that makes associates feel a little bit more comfortable with the situation, and then you just have to be like on it about collecting all that money that you produce. And if there are adjustments, you have to get those off. But we found that works really well. And the number for us that's been kind of almost magic has been if you guarantee 15,000 a month, you're going to get really good applicants. And in my market, other places maybe you have to go higher, I guess. But if we guarantee 15,000 a month, you know, which, you know, at 30% ends up being right around, I think it's 50 grand, right? You're going to get good applicants. And my last two awesome associates, that's how we got them in the door, and they were both awesome. And so it was like, I mean, my newest one, I don't think she ever went under 50. I think her first month she was at 50.
They shouldn't be there very long. If they're there
No.
for more than 90 days, you should get rid of them because there's a
Yeah.
problem. Yeah.
It's painful. Yeah.
How many hours do you expect them to work to do that guarantee?
About 40. We
Okay.
were saying 4 days a week, and whatever those hours were. So I don't know. Yeah, 4 days a week is what we
Okay.
expect.
Thank
And
you.
I think with that guarantee, I told them they could have 10 working days off a year if they want. But I also tell them now, like, if you're going over your guarantee, you can take, I don't care, you can take off as much as you want. As long as you give us heads up and you're hitting your numbers, you can do whatever you want. But for the guarantee, yeah, they can do 10 working days off a year, and I'd let them have that.
Dr. Peterson, anything we've left out?
I think you've covered everything pretty well. How is your assistant school? I know you a few years ago were getting that started and
Yeah,
struggling with it. Have you continued on with it?
we stopped it, but mainly because my wife was the one that kind of spearheaded at the beginning, and we did it primarily to generate good assistants, right? Like not to make money. And we made a little money off of it, but it wasn't a ton, and it was a lot of work. And for a while, we just could not get assistants, and so it was very helpful. We found the market turned on assistants at some point, and we weren't having a really hard time getting them. And my wife was just burned out, and it was hard to manage having a teacher and just the whole thing. It just was not quite worth it, so we stopped. But for us, it was really, there was a time where we just could not get assistants, and that was actually worth doing the school for that. Like we probably had probably 3 or 4 really good assistants that we had for several years that we got out of school. Now we had to train 30, I don't know, 40, a lot, right? Like, and it's a ton of work, and you'll make a little money. Like I think we made like $15,000 a year, and I didn't have to do anything, but like, my wife had to do enough work that she was kind of like, I just don't like this, and so that's why we dropped it. But it was good to get assistants. Probably not worth the money unless you have like a staff member that's super motivated and wants to do it. But yeah, that's how that went for us.
Good. Say hi to Liz for me too, please.
I will. Yeah, it's good. It's good talking to you. It's been fun. It's good to think back on all the growth. I mean, you guys helped us a ton, and we've I'll always be grateful for it. So thanks.
Dr. Harrison, thanks so much for being with us today.
Yeah.
Thank
Absolutely.
you, everybody.
Anytime.
All right.
All right, we'll see you all next month.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Peterson.
Yep.
Okay,
Have a good one.